So now that we have looked at budget lines and um, preferences in more numerical, breaking it down, going step by step, let's look at it in more general terms. And this will also allow us to look at the substitution and the income effects with demand. So the consumption possibilities, the first thing we talked about was the budget line. That's the limits the household's consumptions. It's the maximum combinations of goods and services we can produce given our income. And we worked through this before, but this line is equals to so. So if we're looking at the two goods, we have the amount of income you have is going to equal the price of good A times the quantity of good A. So the total amount spent on good A plus the price of good B times the quantity of good B. So the total amount spent on good B. And so if they're equal to each other, that's where you're on the line. And we said that anywhere inside is affordable. You can get there, but you're not going to be spending all your money. But anywhere on the outside, you can't get to. Okay? It's not affordable. So with our budget constraint, if the price of a good changes, okay, so if the price of the good changes, what's going to happen is that it's going to pivot. So you can see here when the price of a movie is $8, when we're at the middle line here, okay, at $8, your budget is $40 in this example, so you can buy 5. Now let's say that the price goes up to $16, so it goes from 8 to 16, it doubles. Now, if you're not buying any movies, you still can't buy any more sodas. You can still only buy 10 sodas because 10, $4 each, so you still can't buy more. However, for each level of sodas, you can now buy, or you can only buy less movies because now it's more expensive to go to a movie. So when you bought one soda, you could bought roughly 4.5 movies. Now you can only buy half of that, okay? Because the movie's twice as expensive. And so when the price goes up, it pivots in. When the price goes down, on the other hand, right, again, the number of sodas you can buy doesn't change, but the amount of movies you can. So for any level of sodas, you can now buy more movies. And so it pivots out. All right, so this is what happens when the price of a good changes. When your income changes, it affects your ability to buy all the goods. So if your income goes down, you can only buy less of the goods. Now, if we go back to our equation here, we can say this with this equation, right? Because the prices don't change, all that's going to happen is you're going to have a complete shift in. Okay, the ratio, the cost of sodas in terms of movies and vice versa hasn't changed. And so it completely shifts in. Now, if your budget goes up and you have more money, it's going to go out. So the next thing we need to talk about, which we haven't really talked about yet, is indifference curves. Now, indifference curves deal with utility. Okay? The idea with an indifference curve, it's a curve where all points on that curve, the person is equally as happy. Okay? So their utility is the same along any point on this curve. So, for example, here, having 6 sodas and 2 movies brings this person the exact amount of happiness as having 2 sodas, roughly, and 6 movies would bring. Okay? So at any point along here, the person is equally as happy. This person is fine one way or the other. Okay, their level of utility is exactly the same. So now if we looked at this, okay, and this is just one. In reality, there's an infinite amount of indifference curves. Okay, they don't cross each other, and so when you look at this, you want to get further away from the origin because the further out you are, the higher your level utility is. And so let's put one in here. Let's do this. Oops. Let's say we have, all right, so that's here. All right. So the idea is that the further out we go, all right, the higher your utility level is. So this indifference curve gives you more utility than this one does. So if you think about that, would you rather have, which would bring you more happiness? 6 sodas and 2 movies, or 6 sodas and 4 movies? Okay. Well, clearly you'd rather have 6 sodas and 4 movies over 6 sodas and 2 movies. So the further out you are, the higher your utility is. On the other side, the further in you are, the lower your utility. And so, for example, would you rather have 6 sodas and 2 movies, or 6 sodas and no movies? So clearly your preference is to have the 6 and 2. All right. So again, the further out you go, the better off you are. All right. So the further out the indifference curve from the origin, the higher the utility level. So this is just what we talked about there. These are different points, so it doesn't matter if you have C or G, all right, because they're both on the same indifference curve, where else, but you would still prefer to have J over both of them. Now, when we look at the shapes of the indifference curve, substitutability comes into play. Now, with most goods, we have this general concave shape, and the reason why is because of basically the law of diminishing returns, which we talked about a few different times. So basically, each additional unit of a good brings you less and less additional utility, less and less lower marginal utility. And so what happens is, for those first few movies, you're willing to give up a lot of soda to keep you at the same happiness level. Whereas when you go from example 9 to 10, you're really not willing to give up that much soda. So in general, that's what your indifference curves look like. If, for example, they are perfect substitutes, it's a 1-for-1. So each additional, so we have marker pens at a local supermarket and marker pens at a computer or campus bookstore. Doesn't really matter if you buy it at the local supermarket or if you buy it at the bookstore. Either way, it's a 1-for-1. Right? For every 2 fewer markers to keep the same level of utility, you have to have 2 more pens. With perfect complements, it's going to have this 90-degree L-shaped look. So complements are goods you buy together. So it doesn't matter how many, if you have a certain number of one good, it doesn't matter how many you have of the other. Right? It's not going to bring you any more happiness. So for example, right running shoes and left running shoes. Right? If you have one to the right and one to the left, it's going to bring you the same amount of happiness as having one to the right and 5 of the left, and vice versa. And that's just because there's really no reason for you to have more and have the same level of happiness, because they're only good together. Okay, so they're perfect complements. So let's look at your preferences with your indifference curves.